Caleb Morgan was a man who turned heads wherever he went, with his chiseled jawline, intense eyes, and a smile that could thaw the iciest heart. He had a gift for making people feel noticed, important. But behind that magnetic charm was a skilled con artist, a man who had perfected the craft of deception. For years, Caleb lived off the wealth of women who believed his lies, telling them stories of love, loyalty, and lifelong commitment. He would drain their bank accounts with promises, then disappear like a ghost. It was on a warm Sunday afternoon when Caleb first noticed Eleanor Whitmore. She sat on the patio of an upscale cafe, sipping herbal tea and scrolling through her phone. Her silver hair was carefully styled, and her tailored dress reflected quiet elegance and expensive taste. Eleanor exuded sophistication, but Caleb could see the loneliness behind her polished facade. He'd seen that look many times before. She was an ideal target. Eleanor Whitmore had lived a life of comfort and sorrow. Her husband, a shrewd and successful entrepreneur, had left her a fortune when he died suddenly 5 years earlier. At 60, Eleanor had everything money could buy, yet she carried a hollow ache that nothing seemed to fill. Her days were full of charity fundraisers, board meetings for her late husband's foundation, and fashionable luncheons. But when the events ended and the rooms emptied, she was left with silence. Caleb approached with the confident ease of a man who'd done this many times before. "Excuse me," he said warmly, "I couldn't help but notice your book, The Art of Joy. One of my personal favorites." Eleanor looked up, surprised yet intrigued. "Oh. Not many people your age gravitate toward philosophy." "I guess I've always been a bit of an old soul," Caleb said with a soft chuckle, sliding effortlessly into the seat across from her. "I'm Caleb, by the way." "Eleanor," she replied, extending her hand. His handshake was firm but gentle. There was something about him that seemed sincere. Caleb leaned back, eyes locked on hers. "You have a presence, something magnetic. May I buy you another cup of tea?" Eleanor blushed faintly. It had been years since anyone had spoken to her like that. "Well, I suppose one more cup couldn't hurt," she said, her lips curling into a smile. Over the next hour, Caleb worked his usual magic. He listened closely as Eleanor shared stories of her late husband, her philanthropic passions, and her longing to travel the world. He told his own stories, most of them lies, about his modest upbringing, his supposed devotion to social causes, and his ongoing search for meaningful human connection. By the time they said goodbye, Eleanor felt as if she'd known Caleb for years. He was attentive, gentle, and refreshingly open. As he walked her to her car, he handed her a slip of paper with his number scribbled on it. "I'd love to see you again, Eleanor. No pressure. Just two kindred spirits trying to make sense of the world." Eleanor held on to the paper like it was something sacred. Her heart fluttered with a feeling she hadn't known in decades. "Thank you, Caleb. I'll consider it." That night, Caleb sat in his modest apartment, flipping through notes. He had gathered enough about Eleanor to know she was worth the long game. She was wealthy, emotionally vulnerable, and eager for connection. If he played his cards right, she'd be his next big payday. For Eleanor, the encounter felt like destiny. She couldn't stop thinking about Caleb's gentle smile, or the way he seemed to truly see her. For the first time in years, she felt hopeful, maybe even excited about the future. Within a week, Eleanor and Caleb were seeing each other regularly. They took walks through manicured parks, enjoyed candlelit dinners, and shared long, heartfelt conversations. Eleanor began to open up, speaking candidly about her fears of aging alone, her craving for love, and her desire to build a new chapter of her life. "You deserve happiness, Eleanor," Caleb said one evening, their hands entwined as they sat beside the fireplace in her elegant home. "And I want to be the one who gives that to you." Tears filled Eleanor's eyes. "I don't know what I've done to deserve someone like you." Caleb looked at her with carefully rehearsed affection. "You've given me something I thought I'd never find again, a reason to care." You inspire me to be better. Eleanor's heart swelled. After years of solitude, she felt loved again. What she didn't know was that Caleb had manufactured every tender moment. Her vulnerabilities were merely pieces in a carefully plotted scheme to gain access to her wealth. As the months passed, Eleanor began introducing Caleb to her social circle. At charity balls and exclusive dinners, he dazzled. Her friends were impressed, even her skeptical daughter, Lila, had to admit that Caleb seemed decent. But not everyone was charmed. Eleanor's best friend, Judith, couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "He's too perfect," Judith said one night, as the two women enjoyed wine on Eleanor's patio. "No one is that smooth without a catch." Eleanor waved her off, laughing. "You're just being paranoid. Caleb is kind, thoughtful, he makes me feel alive again. Can't you just be happy for me?" Judith sighed. "Just promise me you'll be careful. That's all I ask." Without Eleanor knowing, Caleb was already laying the groundwork. He subtly suggested joint investments, offered to help oversee her foundation, and even mentioned starting a venture together. Eleanor, blinded by love, saw these as acts of partnership and devotion. One evening, as they sat watching the sun dip below the horizon, Eleanor turned to him with a nervous smile. "There's something I've been meaning to say," she began, voice soft. Caleb tilted his head. "What is it, love?" She hesitated, cheeks pink. "I think I'm falling in love with you." Caleb's heart skipped, not with affection, but satisfaction. She was fully hooked. "Eleanor," he said, drawing her close, "you've made me the happiest man on earth." They kissed beneath the glowing sky, and Caleb knew he was close to securing everything he wanted. What he didn't foresee was how far Eleanor's love, and the choices that followed, would take them both. Or how it would unravel the carefully woven web he thought he controlled. As the weeks passed, Caleb became a fixture in Eleanor's life. He kept a drawer of clothes at her home, answered her calls with tenderness, and continued weaving stories that made him seem like the perfect man. Eleanor's world, once quiet and carefully ordered, now felt vibrant again, with laughter in the hallways and plans for the future scribbled on notepads around the house. One day, as they strolled through a private art exhibit hosted by one of Eleanor's friends, Caleb paused before a large painting, a stormy seascape with a ship lost in the waves. "You know," he said, taking Eleanor's hand, "I feel like that ship sometimes. Tossed around. Lost. But with you, it's like I finally found a harbor." Eleanor leaned her head against his shoulder. "You're not lost anymore, Caleb. You're home." But back in his own apartment, where he still maintained a separate life, Caleb wasn't feeling sentimental. He was making spreadsheets, tracking Eleanor's assets, estate holdings, and foundation resources. He had already persuaded her to let him help with a few financial matters, subtly convincing her to sign documents she barely read. What Caleb didn't expect was the return of Lila. Eleanor's daughter, a corporate lawyer based in London, had decided to take an extended leave and spend time back in the States, concerned, if not alarmed, by how quickly her mother's new relationship had escalated. "I just want to get to know him," she told Eleanor. "That's all." Caleb welcomed her with grace, smiling warmly and making small talk over dinner. But behind Lila's polite smile was a razor-sharp mind, and Caleb's charm didn't distract her from subtle inconsistencies in his stories. "You said you worked in microfinance in South America," she said one night over drinks. "Which country again?" "Mostly Peru," Caleb said smoothly. "And some time in Colombia." "Interesting," Lila replied, casually stirring her cocktail. "I did a project in Lima last year." "Which organization were you with?" Caleb hesitated, just long enough. "It was a small, independent initiative. Nothing official." Lila nodded slowly, filing the moment away. Later that week, Lila met with Judith over lunch. They swapped observations and agreed, something was off. Together, they began doing quiet research, digging into Caleb's past. And what they found shocked them: several aliases, a handful of lawsuits from out-of-state women, and a sealed court record involving fraud. Back at the estate, Eleanor remained unaware. Caleb had just returned from a quick trip to New York. He claimed it was for meetings about the business he wanted them to launch. In truth, he'd been seeing another woman. A wealthy widow from Manhattan, one he had been grooming before Eleanor. Lila confronted her mother that evening. "Mom, you need to listen to me. I've been doing some digging, and Caleb isn't who he says he is." Eleanor's expression hardened. "You went behind my back." "Yes, because I love you," Lila said, her voice trembling. "And I'm telling you, he's dangerous. There are court documents, past victims. This isn't about jealousy or overprotection. It's the truth." Eleanor stood silently, staring at the fireplace where she and Caleb had sat so many nights. "No," she finally whispered. "This can't be true. He loves me. He saved me." Lila reached for her hand. "No, Mom. You saved yourself. He just showed up when you were vulnerable. That's what predators do." The confrontation shook Eleanor to her core. That night, after Caleb fell asleep beside her, she crept into her office and opened her laptop. She typed his real name, Caleb Morgan, and what she saw confirmed everything Lila had said. Photos. News articles. Alias after alias. Bankruptcies. Court filings. Victims. Her breath caught in her throat. The man she had loved, trusted, nearly given her entire life to, was a lie. And yet, something cold and clear settled in Eleanor's chest. She had spent decades hosting galas, navigating egos, managing multi-million-dollar foundations. She had survived grief, betrayal, and loss. She would survive this too. The next morning, Eleanor served Caleb breakfast on the veranda: fresh berries, croissants, and French-pressed coffee. She smiled as he kissed her cheek, thanked him for being her rock, and asked if he'd help her draft a proposal for their business that evening. He grinned. "Of course, love. Anything for you." But Eleanor had made her decision. And by nightfall, she would begin setting the trap. That evening, Caleb arrived at Eleanor's study with his usual confidence, laptop in hand, ready to discuss their joint venture. The room was softly lit, the fireplace crackling, the table set with a decanter of wine and 2 glasses. Eleanor greeted him with a warm smile, impeccably dressed in a navy silk blouse and pearls. Her poise was immaculate, but underneath, her heart was pounding. "I thought we could toast to the future before we get into the business plans," she said, pouring the wine with a steady hand. Caleb raised his glass. "To us," he said. Eleanor smiled faintly. "To truth." They sipped. Caleb launched into his pitch, something vague about launching a wellness brand in Eleanor's name, using her foundation's network for cross-promotional philanthropy. He sounded confident, convincing. But Eleanor had heard enough lies for a lifetime. She stood slowly and crossed the room, opening a drawer in her antique cabinet. From it, she pulled a folder and set it gently on the table in front of Caleb. "What's this?" he asked, glancing up. "Go ahead. Open it." Caleb flipped through the pages, and froze. Court records. Articles. A background report. Photos of him with other women, his other marks. Names he hadn't used in years. All compiled neatly. Thoroughly. His mask slipped, just for a second. "Where did you get this?" he asked, voice low. "Does it matter?" Eleanor replied, folding her arms. "You lied to me about everything. Your name. Your past. Your intentions. But the thing that hurts the most, Caleb, is that I let you in. I let myself believe again." Caleb leaned back, schooling his expression. "Eleanor, I can explain." "No," she cut in. You can't. But I can. She pressed a button on a small remote. A red light blinked on a nearby bookshelf. Caleb turned toward it. You recorded this? He asked, panic flashing in his eyes. Just this conversation, Eleanor said coolly. And the last 2 days. I wanted to be sure. And now I am. She walked to her desk and picked up her phone. There's a private security team outside. You won't be leaving this house without giving a full statement to my attorney. I suggest you cooperate. Caleb stood abruptly. You can't do this. You have no right. I have every right, Eleanor said. You stepped into my life, pretending to love me. You targeted me. But you underestimated me. Caleb looked toward the door, calculating. Don't, she said softly. You won't make it past the hallway. A knock sounded at the door, 2 sharp raps. Eleanor opened it to reveal Judith and Lila standing beside a tall man in a dark suit. He nodded politely. Ms. Vance, he said, addressing Eleanor, we're ready when you are. Caleb's shoulders sagged. The fight left his eyes. As the man stepped inside and gestured toward the chair, Eleanor held her ground. I trusted you, Caleb. I won't make that mistake again. The man took Caleb by the arm and guided him into the next room. Lila came forward and wrapped her arms around her mother. You were brave, she whispered. I'm proud of you. Eleanor nodded, eyes glistening. I was fooled, she said softly. But I'm not broken. 1 month later. The headlines were everywhere, notorious romance conman brought down by wealthy widow. Eleanor didn't read the articles. She didn't need to. She was busy rebuilding her life, traveling, reconnecting with friends, and volunteering in person at the charities she once only oversaw. One morning, as she sat on her garden bench with a cup of tea, Lila joined her. Do you regret anything? She asked gently. Eleanor paused. Only that I didn't trust my instincts sooner. But no, I don't regret loving again. Even if it ended in betrayal. It reminded me that I'm still capable of feeling, of hoping. And that's something no one can take from me.